Hi everyone, this is Alex. Just letting you know up front that we had some serious technical issues with this episode. Uh, I apologize for the lateness of the episode. I'm editing as fast as I can, but I'm not sure how much I'll be able to salvage. Thank you for bearing with us, and I'll let the taxpayers play us in.
But they are ruthless, hungry and in power again.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Henry Kissinger's Pokemon Going to Die, Not a Threat.
Just a fact.
It's the number one leftist podcast by, for, and of the terminally online. I don't know if that's the exact wording, but that works for our purposes. Today's going to be a bit of a shorter episode. I'm Alex Leafcrunch, and joining me is Eden TP Albuquerque.
Yeah.
And we're going to not really go into what we usually do, like U.S. politics, world politics, just because we didn't really have the people, the resources, the time to prepare that today. We're going to do a couple shout-outs, and then we're going to talk about something that Eden did a few weeks ago, or I guess a couple months ago at this point, which was attend the Slavoj Žižek and Jordan Peterson debate.
So I think the first topic we've got is just sort of a shout-out about the freedom molecules there.
Yeah, so this was something that it's not like a presidential edict that you have to talk about natural gas as freedom gas or freedom molecules. It was just like an internal like propaganda piece. But it's essentially the same thing as when French fries were rebranded as freedom fries, which is to say it's a national embarrassment, and it's just kind of a funny one.
When the freedom fries thing happened, was that just an internal thing, or I actually don't remember the circumstances.
From what I remember, that wasn't the government. That was just like some guy. I think maybe he was a government official, but it wasn't like the United States government has declared that French fries are freedom fries thing. Whereas this time it's kind of a U.S. government declares that gas is freedom gas.
I honestly love this new bit that the United States government is doing of just renaming it freedom molecules. I feel like I'm trying to remember. I know there was that Eric Garland tweet from a couple of months now. I want to say maybe even a year, where he said that they should start calling Moscow mules freedom donkeys. Which reminds me a little bit of that.
I mean, mules and donkeys are not the same thing, but go off, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Eric Garland and the sort of swirl of equations that are constantly going around his head. I don't think that was the first thing he was worried about, was getting the right animal down.
He didn't carry the two.
No, he did not carry the two.
Yeah, so that's just kind of a funny thing that's happening, is that the world doesn't make sense because the people in charge think you can call natural gas freedom gas, and that won't change the fact that it's killing the planet. Next shout out.
The next shout out we've got is the many wives of online that have come out recently. I think we've have obviously the most recent one, Cliff Wife, who was the wife who fell off a small knoll, and we also have what were some of the other ones? They had the Don't Email My Wife. We had Cliff Wife.
There was the Return of Curvy Wife.
Oh yes, the Curvy Wife rap song.
Yeah. There was Elf Wife, which is kind of less funny because it's just the wife of Pro Jared who cheated on her. But she was called Elf Wife because the only thing people knew about her was that she was in cosplay.
Yeah, I thought that was a Game of Thrones thing at first, and it was much funnier when it was a Game of Thrones thing in my brain, and person doing a very bad thing in real life.
I love that you think there are elves in Game of Thrones.
I used to have any coherent knowledge of this television program.
I genuinely love that. Like, I'm so happy for you.
I'm unsullied by the bad show of DB Weiss and David Benioff.
You should be, yeah, because you watched The Good Wife instead.
Are they involved in The Good Wife?
No, it's just a show with that name.
Oh, damn it. I don't know if I didn't pick up on that joke until just now, but yeah, that makes sense. I was really scared for a sec that they had somehow gotten involved with The Good Wife. Like, oh no. It's actually just completely unrelated quickly. Is The Good Wife any good? Like,
I don't know. I've never seen it.
Okay, neither have I. Okay, I think that's really all we have for shoutouts, honestly.
Well, there's also the USS John S. McCain, which Trump was visiting and didn't want to see John McCain's name, which is a problem because all the crew have the name of the boat on their hats. And to remedy this, the crew was all given a day off because I guess they can't take off their hats or put something over their hats. I
guess by proxy, then that's actually kind of a nice story, even if it comes from the president being like extremely wet. It like at the very least, all those
because he was on a boat, yeah.
Oh,
he was wet because he was on a boat. He got splashed.
He got splashed by the. It's a speed. Few people realize that the SS John McCain is actually just a speedboat. So Trump got splashed on a fishing trip that he was taking.
And then he caught a minnow, and he was like, "This is the hugest fish I've ever seen," and it's because his hands are small.
Oh, hold on. Actually, just a second here. I'm getting a text.
Oh.
Sorry.
What does it say?
It looks like President Trump resigned on account of all the good jokes we just told about him.
Well, say what you will about him, but he knew when to throw in the towel.
That's true. Say what you will about Trump, but he does have very small hands, and he's orange.
And he's wet.
And he's orange.
So that's our shoutouts.
Quickly though, I'd like to throw out one of the things I forgot to mention about the like one sort of, I guess not heavier but like unfortunate things is, but I do think it should be at least offhandedly mentioned with regard to the freedom molecules thing. Is one of the guys who started releasing the freedom molecules thing also said that essentially compared the way that people were talking about CO2 and carbon to the treatment of Jews in the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Which is,
so it
wasn't horrible.
Yeah. It's just, it's word garbage. Fuck that person. Like, that's disgusting.
Yeah, and I thought that should be put out there quickly before we head on to the sort of meat of the episode here today.
Yeah. Yeah, there's other stuff that happened this week, less funny, but let's talk about something. I don't know, was it funny? What was your overall experience with this?
Well, honestly, I do have to say, just sort of off the bat, that it was definitely a waste of the money that I spent to go there. Do
you mind telling us how much money that was, or is that?
No, it's fine. It was about $86 for a ticket.
Oof.
Which you had to also buy them in twos for some reason. So I had to spend so each of my friends and I, we each bought like one for each other and then paid back. But it was like weirdly expensive. Like the fact that it was like pushing over like $170 or something like that per seat per ticket, because you had to buy them in the pairs on any website really that you went to, which I'm not entirely sure why they did. Like, not to sort of disparage the general makeup of the audience, but like I don't really think a ton of people were coming to that in couples. Like, it doesn't really seem like a sort of like a date option to me, but I guess like that's
imagine your first date being that this guy that you were talking to on Tinder says, "Hey, this is really interesting. I think you might like this." And it's that.
I mean, I can genuinely I bet you at least one like set of seats in that place was someone on a date. Maybe not the first date, but date out there. And I want to know how that night ended. Like, I
think it could work for like a certain set of people who like are extremely online and just like both think it's very funny.
That's true, because that's why me and my friends went, is because it was just a very online kind of thing to happen.
Yeah.
Because like this all started apparently because like after they had exchanged some like back and forth because Zizek had said that Peterson was a fraud. Peterson got into an argument on Twitter with a Zizek quotes bot
Oh my God.
and been repeatedly reply. It was in a reply chain to the quotes bot that was just posting random citations from like just different Zizek books and articles at him, and he managed to last like a few. They're all the tweets are deleted now, but you could probably look them up and find like all the like the whole series of because he quote tweeted instead of replying for some reason, but he just repeatedly quote tweeted the replies of this Twitter, just sending like random Zizek quotes at him, and then eventually it turned into this. And the biggest reason why I was away, yeah.
That is so funny.
Yeah, it was a weird situation, and honestly, that level of discourse is kind of what ended up being the actual main event. Like we went there, and Peterson hadn't actually read anything Zizek had written, and he admitted as much at the very beginning of the debate.
Hmm.
And then he had unread any Marx other than the Communist Manifesto, and then that basically the debate was over right there because there wasn't like an equal sort of participation going on.
So essentially, I could have stepped into Jordan Peterson's shoes and made the same arguments he did.
Oh, almost absolutely. Like almost all of his arguments were just like the kind of thing you hear from like a 18-year-old libertarian who's like, sort of just getting a feel of like politics and stuff. It was genuinely embarrassing to watch and like even as someone who has like absolutely no sympathy for Jordan, I felt extremely bad at points watching.
Yeah.
It just felt like I know he does deserve it, but it almost felt like making fun of someone who doesn't deserve it because of the degree to which he was just completely and utterly unprepared for the whole. Like it felt like
So
laughing at someone who hadn't prepared for a presentation in school or something.
yeah, I mean, I guess my first question that I have is, I don't even remember, was the for a dollar name a Marxist? Was that something that actually happened, or was that just like a meme that happened afterward?
That was something that Matt posted in the Discord, but it was it was basically what had happened at the what had happened was essentially is Zizek kept, was needling him about how he always talks about postmodern neo-Marxists and kept asking him if he could name a single Marxist, and he couldn't, and at no point was he able to just pull together even one name of a Marxist theoretician that he was talking about, despite the fact that he was sitting across from a Marxist theoretician. At that moment, he could not pick a single name. Yeah, and that sort of became a meme. I can't remember if it was a thing that more people said or if that was just what Matt posted in the chat when it was happening.
I've definitely seen it like on Twitter.
Yeah, I think it must have been a meme that I wasn't really following it on Twitter because I had to take notes because I was also partially there because of a school thing.
Hmm.
But I saw some of that stuff a little while later where the biggest takeaway honestly that I had from is that even Peterson's fans, because I went and checked on his subreddit after the event, I went and checked, and he actually, even his fans were saying that they were somewhat disappointed in Peterson's performance, which is something I didn't expect. Even coming out of it, I thought, oh, they're all going to try to spin it, but they didn't.
Hmm. That's very funny. So yeah, I guess something I didn't have a chance to look into was apparently Zizek has had a take since the debate that will obviously be affecting people's view of him. Which, I mean, like, Zizek isn't like a great person, all things said.
Yeah, that's something that I should probably get out there as quickly as possible with regards to like what I'm gonna, because when I'm gonna talk about him later on in the episode, I don't like Zizek. Like, I feel should be stressed, like he's not a good person, or in my opinion, a very good theoretician either. I mostly went to this honestly for the joke value, and I feel somewhat bad about doing that anyhow. But the thing that stresses, yeah, he's not a good person, and his most recent take, as you mentioned, is a bad trans take about how the way people understand gender identity is incompatible with Freud. Which
Okay, sure, because we have to be compatible with Freud these days.
Yeah, it's funny to me that like obviously the headline is, in my opinion, a bit more inflammatory than the article itself. Like it's still bad, but the title makes it sound like he's going into like full turf mode, and he doesn't. he's for the most part more respectful than he usually is. But the only problem, he has absolutely no idea what he's talking about because he's speaking about an experience he can't have.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically his whole point of it is that uh, trans identity has to be something inborn that's decided psychosexually in childhood and can't be something that people are allowed to define for themselves. And that's not as bad as the title originally, the title of the article led me to believe it was going to be, but it's still not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was honestly it was transphobic and it was bad and it was kind of the same thing that Zizek has always kind of it's always kind of been problematic about Zizek is that he's probably the most famous academic Marxist like currently active, but he's really a pretty bad standard holder, honestly, for left wing theory as like a popular figure. He's not a good standard bearer for it at all.
Right. All right. Well, yeah, that's good to keep in mind as we talk more about it.
Yeah, it was he very much was problematic even in the course of the debate itself. He had a lot of stuff where he tried to talk about like political correctness and talk about how that was like just liberalism, and he tried to talk about like how he said something at some point about how he doesn't feel bad for immigrants, if I remember correctly, or he refuses to have kind of sympathy for immigrants. I don't like he about how liberals don't talk about the bad things that immigrants do and that we need to be objective and that whole kind of thing. And that really sucked to hear from someone who is supposed to be the good guy of that debate.
Uh-huh. All right. Isn't he an immigrant?
Yeah, that's the worst part is he is an immigrant. Like, obviously he's not the kind of immigrant that people talk about when they talk about scare quotes immigrants.
Yeah.
Because and that's the biggest problem. I think he does still live in Slovenia, but I mean he spends a lot of his time in America, and I don't understand. Well, I mean I do, but it's one of those things where you can tell he was trying very hard to appeal to Peterson's audience. He wanted to try and basically convert as many people as he could from that way over to himself, because he spent very little of his actual time engaging with anything Peterson said, which was fair enough, but he spent most of his time trying to just elucidate his own positions and talk about what he thought. And I can definitely see how you could go if you could go from being a Peterson fan to being a Zizek fan pretty easily, but that's not necessarily a good thing.
Right.
I don't know. The whole sort of experience was very weird. He did a good job in everything except for that sort of stuff. Like he was able to defend Marx and Marxism, but that's one thing. But he was also, a bad person, which is arguably more important in something like that.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, do you want to get into some questions that our audience has about the debate?
I'll do that. Yeah, that sounds good. There's one other thing I did want to mention.
Oh yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
About the actual structure of things is that one of the most important sort of moments in the debate that a lot of people were commenting on later was there was a period in which they started talking about like Christianity and religion for an extended length of time that really had almost nothing to do with the overall series. Ended up agreeing like a great deal about religious symbolism and stuff, and it really ended up having that isn't really to say much, obviously, though, because they weren't really talking about anything of any substance at that point. But the issue that led a lot of Peterson fans that I've seen now on the internet to kind of say that, well, Peterson's going to take on Zizek's critique and it's just going to make him stronger and it's just going to make him like better than he already was. But obviously he wasn't any good to begin with, but the other problem that sort of comes out of that is that Peterson's there wasn't just a critique of Peterson's stuff. Zizek pretty handily sort of took him apart because he literally didn't understand any even not even just Marxism but leftism in general. One of his biggest things was claiming that leftists think that capitalists are evil and that's why they want to overthrow them, as they believe that all the poor people are good and all the rich people are bad. And I mean
right.
That tends to be the case, but it's not, the case beforehand. It's not because they're evil, they're billionaires, or that all billionaires are inherently evil. It's the structure of capitalism makes them do things that are.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was sort of the biggest thing, is he tried to make it all into this sort of, the classic right-wing virtue signaling kind of thing that, Marxists just want their people on top. And, it was a very sort of, again, very elementary sort of conversation because Zizek, it's Zizek's field, it's not Peterson's. And it felt like that was probably the worst part of it is Peterson's not a political philosopher. He's not a politician. He's not an activist. He's not anything like whole field. And so it feels like if you want to have a constructive debate, which obviously I don't think is necessary because debate hasn't gotten anyone anywhere at this point with regards to any political things in the past long while. But if you want to have a constructive debate, I don't understand why you picked two people one of whom is an expert in a field and one of whom is clearly not, and then said, this is the people we're going to have debate each other. It was never going to be productive from the very start.
Exactly. And I don't think anyone was pretending it would be. I think it was very much a spectacle from the start.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was kind of disappointing though, because like as a spectacle, it was fine. Like it was very funny. I will say that. Like there was,
and that's what matters.
Yeah, someone got kicked out within 15 minutes of the debate having begun.
Wow.
Because at the start they said you're not allowed to heckle, you're not allowed to yell at the anything, no conversation allowed between the audience and the participants. And Peterson said something, I don't remember what, and some guy in the background yelled, "You are the dumbest fucking person I've ever met." And you get the sounds of him being like rustled and fought with insecurity in the background for the next couple of minutes. Things like that kind of continued for basically throughout the entire length of the event. It was, lots of, them throwing more jokes than any actual sort of interaction with each other. And,
yeah.
And also Peterson's fans definitely formed a larger contingent of the people there. So it definitely felt like, it definitely felt like everyone there was relating more to Peterson, even though like at the beginning, because, they were all hyped up and ready to support their guy. But as things went on, it ended up being it turned into a Zizek lecture towards the end because Peterson just sat there for about 45 minutes and listened to Zizek talk about capitalism. And he actually ended up, he appeared to agree with him. And I don't, actual like meat of the debate, if you can call it that. And it was just, I don't know, it was a very strange experience from back to front. Like it was complete chaos.
It seems wild to have been there.
Yeah, honestly, that's the only reason I'm glad to have been there is because it feels like the kind of thing that I can say in the future, oh, hey, I was there for that. And that's really the only value that you really would get out of being there was the ability to say that you were.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, sorry, that was my other thing. We can get into questions now if you like.
Oh, yeah, no, that works great. We actually answered a couple of the questions partially. So our first question comes from Anonymous, who says, on a scale from a sniff to a forehead swipe, how much did you want to die when Zizek was being overly reactionary?
It definitely didn't get fully to forehead swipe levels, but it did get to like aggressively rubbing my nose. I say would be about on that one because he never got he never got to the point where he gets in that Big Think video where he says the N-word.
Oh boy.
Yeah, he never got to that point. It's not like again, I'm not defending him when I say this. I'm just providing context. He doesnn't say it as directly as a slur. It obviously still is, but he's telling a story that I'm sure is very true, where a black guy told him that he could call him the N-word because Zizek had the confidence to say a racist joke to him. It's
okay.
It's really bad. And that's when he says it in the context of the story. He still shouldn't. I just want to clarify that this isn't like a Zizek had a heated gaming moment kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, not defending the fact that he said it by any stretch of the imagination, though, for what that's worth. Obviously, it was still not great. But yeah, he got reactionary, but it wasn't the absolute worst I've seen him get or heard him get.
All right, that's good to know. Host of the show, taking turns at random, our friend Patrick, says, "Hi HKIP, first time, long time. When thinking about these kinds of personality debates, I often find that the left lacks many alive, popular ideological figureheads without some sort of comedic slant. Zizek is perhaps one of them, but has notable ideological failings. I know the concept of celebrity is kind of fucked up to begin with, but is that a necessary evil we have to contend with in serious discussions about popularizing left thought in the modern age?" Dan, that's a good question.
That's an extremely good question that I wish I had a better answer for.
Yeah. I mean, like I maybe this isn't the right comparison to make, but what that makes me think of is ContraPoints,
Oh, absolutely.
who has
Sorry, I'll let you go into some other thing that yeah, Zizek and ContraPoints are honestly very similar figures.
yeah, like popular uh leftism with comedy with a persona attached and with some deep ideological failings.
Absolutely. Oh, honestly, the sad thing is I'm probably more familiar with Contra than I am with Zizek, all things considered.
I
But
mean, I don't know if that's sad. I think that's just a circumstance of where you are in life and in like the history of leftism.
that makes sense, yeah. And like the one thing I did want to say about that, which is kind of like it kind of speaks to Patrick's point, and it's a bit, I guess, the unfortunate side of things is that it's for the right because they have plenty of, ideological figureheads that,
Hmm.
are increasingly popular as of late. I think the reason for this is again, what modern conservatism is obviously not even really it's easy to have ideological figureheads for them because it's not really a coherent ideology in terms of like actually trying to strive towards any specific facts. It's just there to make sure that a pre-existing hierarchy continues to exist at any cost. So you can have
Yeah,
ideas you want, so long as those ideas end with the conclusion, rich straight white men should remain at the top of the pile. And as long as you say that, you're fine. You can be Julius Evola and believe in weird esoteric magics, or you can be like a traditional Catholic or a Nietzschean atheist. It doesn't matter so long as at the end you say the things that the people who want, you say the line. So long as you do that, you're fine. Whereas on the left, I like to believe we try to have standards about the people that we hold up as figureheads, and it
hmm,
makes it a lot harder to build those people up, especially. And I mean, that's good that we do that. That's not a criticism whatsoever. But we end up in the situation where we don't have anybody because it's very difficult to live up to those standards.
I mean, I think in some ways, like having figureheads is kind of like an oxymoron. Like the entire point of at least my understanding of leftism is to remove hierarchies to like treat everyone on a level playing field. And having figureheads, having celebrity at all, even if they have good intentions, and even if they were ideologically perfect, which is impossible, that would still create an uneven playing field.
I think that's true, and I think that's kind of borne out in the legacy of a lot of like historical popular leftist movements. Please don't at me on Twitter. There's a lot of this sort of things where you start off with people who had genuinely probably positive aims for what they were trying to do, but you end up sort of deifying those people down the line, and you end up with this unwillingness to adapt to and change with the times, and that's how you get things like the late Soviet Union and things like that is these worship of these public figures.
Right. So what you're saying is that ContraPoint stands are the new Leninists.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably a good way to boil it down. It's,
I this was a joke. That was a
no,
joke, to be clear.
no, I know. I
That was for the audience.
I don't think we're going to be seeing in the future giant statues of ContraPoints and Zizek in the future.
Also, when I said Leninist, I meant Stalinists. But I mean,
Yeah,
regardless, it's the point
yeah.
holds.
This is a comedy podcast. Don't need to worry about.
Don't fact check us.
Yeah, don't fact check us. But that's sort of the big thing is I've obviously I haven't read a ton of Zizek's things. I've read one of his books for school and one of his articles also for school, and I've seen that debate, and that's about it. But from what I've seen of most of his ideas, there's almost nothing even that he says that's not available from someone better suited to, like, both better in terms of not being a reactionary and better in terms of presenting the ideas with less academic sort of language than he does.
Hmm.
Like one of his, like, he's and I'm not talking about the psychoanalysis parts, that's almost entirely can be thrown away, but like the actual leftist ideas that he has, like his whole critique of ideology that everyone holds him up for, this force that makes the force that makes people act the way they do. That's been a Marxist concept forever, and he's just sort of built upon it. and I don't really think that we need Zizek as a movement any more than, I mean, obviously, and more so than we don't need any figureheads. I think specifically him, there's not really a ton there, even beyond the bad things, the good things that people say. This is what Zizek, this is why we should have him and his writings. They're not really worth it. Like,
Mhm.
it's always been it's been kind of confusing to me because and I don't want to go too much down like the theory rabbit hole because that's not good for anybody. But the one thing I will say is that if you want his ideas but presented in a coherent sort of way, there's it's not a terribly long essay called "Ideological State Apparatuses" by Louis Althusser, and it's basically the same thing except presented by someone who was actually more committed to activist causes than Zizek was, and presented much more clearly. But I also want to make clear Althusser did also go insane at the end of his life and murder his wife. So I'm not saying that he's a better person. I'm just saying it's clearer and doesn't require you to worship a currently negative celebrity figure.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, who among us hasn't gone insane and killed their wife? But I think, yeah, just the idea of worship at all is a dangerous one when your ideology is to decentralize power.
Oh, absolutely, and I think that's the problem with like these. I do think though we do have to for at least a little while grapple with the fact that there's going to be celebrity leftists because modern.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we're not gonna no one's gonna know what the deal is unless someone tells them.
And that's kind of the unfortunate paradox you enter into is you don't want to deify these people, but there's going to be a large section of a movement that is going to deify these people because they're the ones who are the quote unquote originators of whatever's going on. Like you see a lot whenever ContraPoints or H Bomber Guy or any of these sort of people just speaking for the online left make genuine mistakes or even if they're not mistakes do something problematic, there is this knee-jerk response to sort of defend them because they're doing more good than they are harm. That's a bad way I think to view these kind of things because not from an ideological purity sense, but if they're doing something that's harmful, that's gonna be the undoing of any movement they're leading at the end of the day anyways. So I don't think that it's worth the while.
That's not how I had thought of it, but that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that's the best I could do for that particular question. That's a pretty
I mean, yeah, that was a big question.
The big question is pretty complicated bag of worms there.
Maybe a bit of a simpler question from another host of the show, Trampoline, our friend Matt, says, "Hey, it's me, Dad. Which between Zizek and Peterson hates women more? Thanks."
I mean, I guess it has to be Peterson just because at least Zizek has some level of existing leftist values, whereas Peterson has said that there should be enforced monogamy.
Right.
I mean, that's.
By the way, is it Zizek, not Zizek? Have I been saying it wrong?
I honestly, it is Zizek. You're saying it right. It's just it's been so burned into my brain that this is how you say it that I'm, despite trying, probably
okay.
keep saying Zizek for the rest of this episode. But you're right. I'm trying to say it properly.
That's fine. I was just not sure.
No, that's fine. It's just you've got it right. But it's I don't know. I feel like it's hard to top Peterson being for forced monogamy in terms of hating women. But
yeah,
make no mistake, Zizek definitely has big misogyny problems.
Big misogynist energy.
Yes, he is. Damn it! I totally lost the bit I was going to do there, but yeah, Zizek is not free of sin in that regard. A bit that was actually something that didn't really come up though at the debate. I will say was there's really not a lot of talk about women's rights or anything like that. Neither one of them said women's rights. Neither one of them said trans rights. It was very disappointing, honestly. I wanted to hear Zizek say trans rights. I'm sure that's a thing he would do.
Yeah.
But yeah,
which kind of speaks to that meme as kind of an empty platitude.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was the thing is I genuinely wanted to try to find and speak to Zizek before I left. I was definitely overly optimistic about the chances that either of them were going to do anything afterwards. Because Zizek actually has been known for being relatively friendly after his lectures and whatnot. And I wanted to talk to him just specifically so I could get a video of him saying trans rights, just because I thought,
Right.
like you said, it is kind of a hollow statement to get somebody to say, because it's literally just requires saying two words. It doesn't really mean anything, and it's kind
What if Zizek said Semper Funny?
of. Oh man, I really want to really want to hear Zizek.
That'll be so good.
It would be extremely good
All
if
right,
Zizek said Semper Funny.
Matt, you have a Cameo account. I guess you know what to do to get someone to say Semper Funny.
I really hope Zizek has a Cameo account. I mean, I know he did actually. He wrote ad copy for I think Kelvin Klein, like a little
Oh yeah, I saw that.
which was still very strange to me. Like he said that he because he'd rather work for a corporation than be an academic in America, which is a weird statement to make. But this is all.
Sounds like maybe it was performance art.
Yeah, I think that's what he was trying to do, because all of the captions he writes are all very, philosophical Hegelian stuff about, people performing romance for the people watching them. So it's very thank you
Hmm.
kind of thing, kind of what's on there about like how you're buying these products because you want other people to see you in them and you want their recognition. And like again, it feels like a lot of what he does is to be seen and not really because he's actually like interested in advancing any particular cause or any particular ideas.
Yeah.
He's interested in advancing Slavoj Zizek, or as a personality rather than as anything else. Like he contradicts himself like repeatedly in a lot of the interviews and stuff that he gives if it's going to say the contrarian thing.
Hmm. Should we go to the next question?
Sounds good.
Hello?
Oh yes, sorry, yeah, I think I cut out again, but yeah, whenever it's good.
Okay. So Tumblr user Rowan Wordsmith asks, did the Peterson versus Zizek debate seem like the sort of thing that actually had a meaningful impact on its audience? Because I don't know if I can imagine most Peterson fans actually taking in new information from people other than Jordy Petey. I think you kind of alluded to the fact that maybe some people were taken in towards the end because Jordan Peterson like ran out of things to say and just started listening to a Zizek lecture.
Yeah, that's really the most that I can say. So it definitely didn't have any real impact. Obviously, like I will say that for starters, even if they took in Zizek's ideas, really all they took them in to do was to, introduce them to the system of Jordan Peterson's ideas, quote unquote. And, and it just ended up being a confirmation bias thing. Like, oh, look, they had a conversation. This means that Zizek and Peterson agree with each other. And so I can, uncritically accept Zizek's things as part of my system and it's going to be fine. And that was kind of I feel like that's what happens in any sort of public debate is you're not going to change people's minds because they're there to see their guy. They're not there to, I don't know. I hate to have a rational conversation. I don't want to sound like one of those like YouTubers who are like, oh, we need to have more logic and reason, but that, they're not there for that at all anyways.
I guess that kind of dovetails in with the next question from Mogu, which is, what other theorists would you want to see go up against JP? Like, do you think there is someone who could have a constructive conversation in that kind of setting? Or would it just always be spectacle no matter what?
I don't think that there's a leftist thinker who can have like a constructive conversation with Jordan B. Peterson because he doesn't want to have a constructive conversation, and and his fans don't want to have constructive conversations about these sort of things. They want to be right, and that's not ever going to really lend itself to that. Like I feel like if you debates within say the left as a unit are one thing. Like you can have, a debate series between like Noam Chomsky and Michel Foucault because they're on the same side, broadly speaking. You can't have one the left and the right because, and I hate to sound overly militant, it's combat. The things you're going to be debating are going to be things that are life and death for people. And so I don't really think there's ever going to be a way that you could. I know there's plenty of thinkers that I think would be very funny. I would like to see debate with Peterson, but there's no one there that if I actually sat down and was like kind of sober and serious about it, there's no one where I think like, yeah, this could be potentially useful and good for those Peterson fans, because like the only ones who it would be potentially useful are people who still have noxious ideas about social issues. And I don't want someone to be a leftist but keep all the bigoted garbage that they had before, because that's not really moving in a good direction anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that kind of brings us to our last question from Siberian Pine, which is actually a great like kind of encapsulation of, I guess, where we've gone with this conversation. So Siberian Pine says, I have a view of Zizek where I think his reactionary grumpy old man politics, quote, trans dogma is incompatible with Freud, unquote, are super dangerous given their leftist framing, but I still think he's funny and like to see reactionaries flounder trying to deal with him. Do you worry that we're empowering someone with scope to be very harmful out of nostalgia for his better work and a desire to watch the spectacle?
I mean, honestly, yeah, probably. Unfortunately, like I not that I see him being the head of anything important or serious anytime soon. I feel like he's kind of a dangerous figure to be being like empowered.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's kind of the big question of this debate, and I don't think there's an easy answer. Yes, it's a spectacle, and he's not great, but also, I don't know.
I don't want to be like, yeah, like supporting a transphobe to own Jordan B. Peterson fans feels like a pretty, shitty spot to be in. And that's why honestly, I as soon as I saw the debate come up, I went and immediately just bought tickets because, basically, haha, funny meme. And then almost immediately for the rest of the time of the interim felt kind of bad about doing it because I didn't give money to either of these people.
Yeah.
Like that was basically how the whole process that happened was just immediately like, oh yeah, I'm going to go buy this. Is going to be super funny. And then immediately, well, I just gave money to Zizek and Jordan B. Peterson. And I don't feel super cool about having done that, if I'm being completely honest. That's, I think, really the best answer I can give to the question is yeah, probably, but I did. So I'm not really in any position to say anything about other people doing it because, I've done that. I have, sort of fed the machine, as it were. And I feel like that's, again, to go back to what we had talked about with Patrick's question, unfortunately kind of inevitable to a certain point because at the
right. I mean, it's a function. It's a kind of consumption under capitalism, which is never ethical. Like there's no like debate that will actually be good to give money to in the grand scheme of things. It's just like something that happens.
And like,
I don't know where I'm going with this.
No, I think that makes sense. Like the biggest problem with like this whole thing is there's not really ever been, I'd say, on the left or the right, like an ideological figure who you can sit there and say, yeah, they're 100% someone I feel comfortable supporting 100% of the time. Like, a lot of like the big name leftist theorists and leftist, academics and public figures, almost all of them have at least one thing that are like, and not to sound like I'm doing the right wing cancel culture thing, but they all have things that are, worth, that would be worth saying this person, should be thrown out. And so I think that's the issue you run into is until we start developing a society that has the kind of people who you can turn to, and there's not going to be those issues. Unfortunately, there's always going to be that holdover from previous generations and from different ways of thinking about things that are going to be problematic. Like even looking back at like the last big intellectual debate thing or whatever that happened when it was Foucault and Chomsky. I know for a fact like Foucault signed on a petition to eliminate France's age of consent back in the 70s. So like there's always those sort of things that are going to be disqualifying, I think, with a lot of early leftist leaders.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's kind of, like, that example and specifically is something obviously worth heavy critique and, like, a rejection of that person. But, like, on a wider scale, I think, like, thinking of human beings as people to be thrown out or to hope for a future where personality flaws and bad ideas won't exist is something that is kind of just unreasonable and unrealistic. I think we have to work with what people are, which is flawed people.
Oh, yeah.
And some flaws are worse than others, for sure. And I'm not saying that, like, you can't... I'm not saying cancel culture is bad, because there's things that people can't be given a platform for, obviously. But I think, thinking of this thing in terms of whether a person is pure or not is never going to give any results, because no one's pure, because someone's always going to have bad ideas. Even the best intentioned person is going to have poorly thought out things in their lives.
Oh yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. It's very hard to sort of dance around the subject without accidentally sounding like I'm trying to say that, well, we have to ignore people's flaws.
Exactly. And that's the issue, is that, like, it's hard to talk about that without sounding like you're forgiving things for things which shouldn't be forgiven. But at the end of the day, everyone's a human being, and whether you listen to that person or not, they contain both bad and good, and you have to take what you can from the good of that person, even if you're rejecting the bad of that person.
Because otherwise you end up in a situation where literally every single, I guess, figure from any political tradition is going to have a list of things you could say. Like, you wouldn't be able to do anything ever if you waited around for essentially a
exactly
for your set of ideas. So yeah, I think that it kind of sucked giving money to the two of them, but at the very least, there's that like, my only hope, and this is where I will be optimistic about it, is that event occurring will encourage increased public conversation about these sorts of things, and I think would be a lot healthier and a lot more positive and constructive.
Yeah,
I think that's the most that you can hope for to that sort of thing. Is that instead of just it being Jordan Peterson said this and Zizek said that, it turns into people having conversations with their families and with their friends about these sorts of issues, not just capitalism and the stuff they were talking there, but any sort of contentious issues, that it encourages people to start having those at a sort of a person-to-person level, where there's a greater chance of having that kind of a greater movement, a shifting of the Overton window towards good and better things.
Sure. I think that's probably a good end note.
Yeah, I think so too.
So apologies again for the irregular episode this week, but I think this was a very interesting discussion. Thanks for your questions. And now we'll get into the. I guess we could do Lightbringers. Do you have one?
I've got a Lightbringer, yeah. My Lightbringer for this week is "I Think You Should Leave" with Tim Robinson, which has.
I've heard good things.
It's been one of the first laugh out loud funny sketch comedy things that I've seen in a really long time, and it's managed to do that without being the kind of show where you have to be like, well, look out for episode 4 or look out for this sketch and skip that because it says something that's unconscionable or whatever. I mean, if maybe I haven't gotten to that point yet, but so far it's managed to be extremely funny without having anything that I have to worry about for myself or for anybody else if I'm recommending it, and that's just been very nice.
Nice. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out when I have a chance, because I've heard from several people whose comedy tastes I trust that it's good.
It's extremely good. It's like if Mr. Show wasn't covered in 90s edgy humor.
Is that the David Cross one?
Yes.
Hello?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I must have cut out when I said it, but yeah, that's the one.
Gotcha. My Lightbringer is E3, which is coming up in a couple weeks here, because I am a material girl in a material world, and despite the constant negative media, E33, consumerism is bad, but once a year I ignore that and get excited about video games, and half the time Todd Howard comes out and mocks me for trusting him, and the other half of the time I get enchanted with a new thing I've never seen before and get excited about the fact that video games are beautiful, are made by people, which I hope before next E3 the video game unionization effort is full steam ahead, because those folks need unions. 100%.
I guess a question before we go for you. What new what new sort of piece of hardware do you think that Todd Howard will be releasing Skyrim for at this year's E3?
That's a great question. I think, Nintendo has said that the 3DS is on its way out, but there might still be third-party games coming out for it. So I think 2019 is the year of Skyrim 3DS.
Oh well, I look forward to Skyrim 3DS. Finally, the
Yeah.
3D portable Skyrim experience that I've been waiting for.
Well, it'll just be new 3DS because, like Minecraft, is only available on the new 3DS with its marginally higher horsepower. Yeah, that's my E3 prediction, and I'll stick to it.
All right. Well, look, if he takes the Doom has been able to run on a hair dryer. We'll see if Todd Howard comes out with a waffle maker that can play Skyrim.
Well, I wish Todd Howard would run with a hair dryer. Not a threat, just a fact.
All right. My Discord's about to.
Hey, it's me, Alex, again from before. So we lost Eden there. I apologize again for this episode. Just a confluence of bad things going wrong with us for the recording. So I'm just going to finish this out on my own here. I want to thank our patrons. If you'd like to donate to episodes of better quality than this, of this podcast, you can go to patreon.com/HKIPGTD and donate at the $1 level, which gives you access to bonus content, such as Lightbringers, outtakes, post-shows, or you can donate at the $5 level, which gives you a special role in the Discord and a shout-out on the podcast for being such a good comrade. At the $10 tier, you get an even more special role in the Discord that allows you to listen in on our podcast while we record it, as no one was doing, luckily, honestly, during that recording. So yeah, let's thank the patrons. I want to thank Stephanie Ruff, David Besser, Burgermeister, thank you for that name, Dr. Activisionary, Alex Schaup, Pregnant Seinfeld, Fully Automated Luxury Gay Space Hellcat, Six Arm Sweater, Michael Weems, Mogu, Kangaria, Florian Siegel, The Tallest Jew, Tufster McGee, Siberian Pine Hardwood, Ellen the Anarcho-Hollandiest, Evan, Actual Socialist Elon Musk, Nick Verne, Summer Geist, Ollie Anders, Alex Hoot, Springo Zuma Kuoinga Boingy Boingy, Bryant, Chaz Goblin, Nick Clarkson, Maximilian Rower, Destrihawk, Kadeho, Bernie Sandor Clegane, Non-Binary with Left Beef, Dickbutt is the Real Jesus, PR the Disaster, Dijonais, Paul Blart Fleshclart. I'm not going to repeat that. You can find us on Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, Gmail, Discord, and our subreddit, generally at HKIPGTD. Thank you to Bisexual Punch Party for running our subreddit. Thank you to the Taxpayers for letting us use their song Evil Men off the album Cold Hearted Town. We are on Spotify and Stitcher. Thank you to Matt of GameCube Nintendo, of Noisespace.xyz, of the show, of us, of Friends of Life, for everything he does behind the scenes here. If you want to donate to our little podcast creche, you can go to the Noisespace.xyz Patreon to chip in and help Matt cover server costs. There are other shows on this little network, and since I'm the only one here, I'm going to recommend Podcasting is Forbidden in the Cloud Recesses, because I was on an episode just today, and it was good. I enjoyed it. I liked to say it, and you'll love to hear it. My name is Alex Leafcrunch. You can find me at leafcrunch on Twitter and at tumblr.com/ nope, that's not how Tumblr works, but whatever, Leafcrunch. You can find Eden on Twitter at TP_Albuquerque. You can find, I already said where you can find us. I think that's it. Apologies. I don't think anyone's done this solo before. I think we're good. I think I'm going to say goodbye now. Memento Poke Mori.